Goals. Now, these are undoubtedly things that we all have, especially at the beginning of the year. Now, most of us have them all the time on a weekly, daily, monthly, or even yearly basis. Some are big, some are small. But regardless of their size, most of us need to communicate them in some way or other, especially when we're working in the professional space, whether that's maybe a startup company, a big corporate company, in the office. It doesn't matter. You have to communicate these goals to your management, to your subordinates, to your peers, to your colleagues. And so we really need the right vocabulary, phrases, expressions, nouns, verbs to do that effectively. So in this podcast episode, we're going to be looking at the 12 English expressions for goal setting that you are going to need in the professional space. Right, let's get started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Business English Podcast, helping professionals communicate more effectively, more confidently, and with impact. With your host, Rob, from Energetic English. Let's get down to business. So before jumping into the 12 expressions used for goal setting, let's deal with some of the vital vocabulary that we're all going to need first in order to communicate our goals. So first of all, and rather obviously, goal, as in the thing you want to achieve. Now, when talking about your goal, you could use some alternative vocabulary such as your aim or your target or your mission, although mission sounds quite authoritative and military, police, it's your mission. But, for example, my mission for this month is to run 10 kilometers. My aim for this week is to run 2 kilometers. My target for today is to get outside, put my trainers on, and go for a little bit of a run. So, synonyms for goal: aim, target, and mission. There are also another two very important nouns to be aware of, and these are timeline and deadline. Now, it's important not to get these mixed up, as they're frequently used when talking about aims and goals and targets. So the first one, timeline. We have a 6-week timeline in order to achieve our target. Now, timeline is the length of time that you are presented with to achieve your aim or target. Now, deadline is the hard stop. It is your finish line. It is the thing that you are running towards, essentially. Now, an example here is the deadline for this target is 6 weeks from now. The deadline for this target is 6 weeks from now. So, timeline on the one hand is the amount of time that you have. For example, this is a 6-week timeline that you will move through in order to achieve your target, aim, or goal. And the deadline is your hard stop. So the deadline for this target is 6 weeks from now. Now, both of these nouns are very useful, so get familiar with them and start using them as soon as you can. Now we've talked about some of the core nouns surrounding goal setting. Let's take a closer look at the verbs associated with setting goals in business English when working in that professional space. So the big one, and as you might have guessed by the title of this episode, is to set. We set goals. For example, I have set a goal of running 10 kilometers this month. But once we've set this goal, we must do something about it. We must do something in order to achieve it. So what combination of words do we use here? We use work towards. We work towards our goal. For example, I will be working towards my goal of running 10 kilometers by exercising each night after work. Now, some alternatives here, instead of saying work towards or working towards, in popular social media, you will see that people hustle towards something or grind towards something. Now, these last two are more informal and speak to a slightly more intensive way of working toward a goal. So, if you're going to use this term like hustling or grinding towards it, it will be more informal. Make sure that the audience is appropriate. I've been hustling away at the weekend or grinding towards my goals. But if you're making a bit more of a speech, potentially to a larger audience or in a formal context, you just say the team are working towards their goal of submitting those proposals by the end of the month. Okay, using hustling or grinding in this context, maybe in a boardroom or a work meeting, may be a little bit too informal. But it's absolutely fine to use, down the coffee shop or the bar, talking to your friends or colleagues. So now, after grinding towards your goal each evening, what do we say when we get to our goal? What are these verbs that we use when we get to our goal? Well, we achieve our goals. We reach our goals. We hit our goals. And if you're feeling really motivated and really excited, we smash our goals. Again, this is a very common one that you'll see out online, people smashing their goals, meaning absolutely obliterate them, and being very successful in that. So, here's to you smashing your goals this year. However, I must say that on the odd occasion, we may not be so lucky in achieving our goal and smashing our goal. Therefore, we miss our target or we miss our goal. And in this case, we'll just have to hustle a little harder. Right, now we have learnt the basic words of how to talk about your goals. Let's take it up a level. Let's move away from those nouns and verbs, the basic mechanics of how to express your goals, and move on to the 12 expressions that are going to help you really communicate your goals and goal setting effectively. Now, the first set of expressions, 5 of them, will be helpful when beginning your goal, starting to talk about the start of your goal. So, first one up here is to set out to do something. To set out to do something. Now, this means literally to start doing something. For example, I'm going to set out to do 50 push-ups every day. That sounds painful. Okay, next up, best foot forward. Best foot forward. Now, this means to start something with as much effort and determination as possible. For example, my goal for this year is pretty huge. So I'm putting my best foot forward just to see what happens. Now, this is a really good one, and it's what I believe everybody should start the year with, or attempting any task, is to put their best foot forward. Next one up is number one priority. Number one priority. Now, a thing that really receives your utmost attention and energy. For example, healthy eating is my number one priority this year. Now, number one priority is a really well-used expression, and I think the key with this term is not to overuse it. Not everything can be your number one priority. So use it sparingly and keep it back for the things that really deserve your utmost attention and energy. Don't just throw this one out and attach it to all of your goals. Everything can't be your number one priority. Okay, next one up. To put a plan together. To put a plan together. And this essentially means just to plan something. For example, if you want to achieve your goals for this year, you must put a plan together. Now, this is something that I believe all professionals should do. They should be putting their plans together at the start of the year, or even periodically throughout the year, every quarter, put their plans together, ready to attack the next 90 days or so. And finally, for beginning the goals, we're going to look at to work away at something. So to work away at something. Now, this means to persist and continue working at something. For example, my language goals for this year are ambitious, but I know if I keep working away at them, I will be successful. Now, again, this is a pretty useful phrase for most professionals out there because they do, in fact, work away at their projects, at their tasks. If something is difficult or is a fairly sizable job, then you will find that teams or businesses, even whole corporations, work away at achieving that end result. So to persist and continue working at something, to work away at something. Okay, let's move on to the second group of expressions now, which really talk about when things get a little bit difficult, things start to become a little bit more tricky with your goals or when setting your goals. So the first expression here is to come down to the wire, to come down to the wire. And this means that a result really isn't clear or obvious or known until the end, until right at the end of a process or project. For example, the deadline is pretty tight, so it is really going to come down to the wire with this latest task. And what we're saying here is that we just don't know what's going to happen. Will it be a success or won't it be a success? It's going to come right down to the wire. We're not going to know until the end which horse won the race, whether we're going to get to that deadline successfully or not. Okay, so to come down to the wire is a really good one. The next one is rise to the challenge. To rise to the challenge. Now, be careful here. It is rise, not raise. To rise to the challenge means to respond to a difficult situation in a way where one pursues success. For example, I have set some ambitious goals this year, but I know I will rise to the challenge. And I think most professionals do, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're working in a big corporation, small corporation, medium-sized business, doesn't matter. Most professionals will rise to the challenge and meet that challenge head on in order to be successful and work towards the deadline or their success. The next one is push the envelope. Push the envelope. Now, if you push the envelope, it means to really approach or extend the limits of what is possible. For example, with this sort of timeline, we're going to have to push the envelope to achieve the aim of this project. Remember that piece of vocabulary from earlier, timeline. So with this sort of timeline, we're going to have to push the envelope to achieve the aim of this project. So what we're doing is really pushing the limits of what is possible, really grinding hard and pushing potentially our team or ourselves to the limit just to see if we can get to that deadline and hit it effectively. And this one here, to push yourself. To push yourself is a really interesting one, and I think it's fairly self-explanatory. To accept a challenge and undertake it despite its difficulty. Now, professionals, habitually will be doing this, I'm sure. For example, professionals will always find new and ingenious ways to push themselves in the new year. taking themselves to that next level, to undertake that challenge despite its difficulty, to push yourself. And then finally, in this section, to go the extra mile. Now, to go the extra mile means to make a special effort to do something. For example, I'm going to go the extra mile this year to make sure I smash all my goals. To go the extra mile, just to make a special effort to do something. And finally, as we said at the start, there will be occasions where we're not that successful or we miss the target. So, two expressions here that can be used in this unfortunate scenario, however temporary that may be, but the two expressions here are to come up short, to come up short. And this means to fail to reach a goal or standard. For example, due to the lack of resources, we came up short on last year's goals. Due to the lack of resources, we came up short on last year's goals. To come up short. The next one here is to fall short of something, to fall short of something. And this means to fail to meet an expectation or standard, to fail to meet an expectation or standard. For example, I don't want to fall short of my own expectations this year, so I must stick to the plan. I don't want to fall short of my own expectations this year, so I must stick to the plan. And that is to fall short. So there we have it, the 12 expressions used to express our goals or for goal setting in general, in addition to those nouns and verbs that we use at the beginning of this episode. Now, goal setting is so important for professionals, and speaking about them is an important step in achieving them. Now you're equipped with the correct expressions, so go and share your goals and your progress and your successes with the world. Remember, the sky's the limit. This has been the Business English Podcast. Check out the blog for a consolidated version of this episode, and we'll see you next time.